CashFlow Diary Podcast, episode 446.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary Podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts and, dare I say, wallets? I mean, for those of you who actually still have a wallet, which is an interesting concept and question and change in and of itself, because one of the things that your business needs, one of the things that you require in order to function on this planet, we need, well, currency or money, as some people have been known to call it. And today's guest is going to help you and I with that. Why do I say so? Because he is a tech columnist for Yahoo Finance. You may know him already. His name is, of course, David Pogue. And what's interesting is that one of the things he's really, really good at is helping you and I understand money. More importantly, did you know there was such a thing as a unhealthy money decision? You're like, yes, Jay, I've made plenty of them. Okay, got it. So maybe he has the cure and we can listen to write down this prescription. So I know this is going to be one of those times where you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention and listen more than once. So let's get ready to hear Mr. David Pogue. David, you there?
I am here. Thank you so much.
I am glad that you are here, sir. Are you here to rescue us? I hope so.
No, I'm here to plug a book. What do you think?
Yeah. Either way, we'll take it because I'm guessing inside the book there's something that will help us.
I bet there is.
Got it. So this being your first time here, I have to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that one of the things that happens is we as entrepreneurs, occasionally we get dressed up. Maybe we put on a cape and some tights and we feel like we're flying around town. But at the end of the day, we are saving our customers and rescuing them and helping them with our product and service. However, also, like superheroes, entrepreneurs have a beginning. If you think about it, like Spider-Man, you know, he was really just kind of a college student and taking some photos trying to make ends meet. And then something happens and then he gets to choose to use his special ability for good or evil. And then we know him as Spider-Man. So
my origin story, in other words.
Exactly. So my question to you is, before all the accolades, before the books, before the New York Times article, Scientific American, CBS News Sunday Morning, before Yahoo, before all of the things that you are currently known for today, who is David Pogue?
You know, no one has asked that question, and that's a very, very good one. So I grew up in Cleveland, and my mom is kind of an interesting character. She acts as though she grew up in the Depression, in that she is very, very frugal, and she reuses napkins from meal to meal. I mean, paper napkins.
Wow.
And she saves aluminum foil and puts it in a drawer for use later, and so on. So, in fact, she's too young to have lived through the Depression. She was born around the Depression. So I think this was all filtered down to her from her father, who did live through the Depression.
Right.
And you know, it kind of rubbed off on me when most teenagers were reading, you know, Playboy and National Lampoon. I was reading Consumer Reports. I've always been a money nerd, and the funny thing is that so the book that I'm flogging here is called Pogue's Basics Money, and it is actually like my 103rd book. I've written many books about consumer technology, but my entire career, value and money has always been lurking in everything I write. I mean, I'm mainly known as a tech reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
I review phones and tablets and laptops and so on. For the New York Times for a long time, and now for Yahoo Finance. But built into that job is it worth it, and what do you get for your money? Mm-hmm. So in a way, coming around to this book is bringing it all home.
Got it. I get it. And just so you know, I am an Apple fanboy, and I don't really care if it's worth it. It's just something I've continually purchased over and over again. But I'm sure you have an opinion on that.
Part of the cult.
What's that?
Well, You two are part of the cult.
Yes, there it is. And I happily admit it. I know. But I just want to make sure I heard this correctly. You said you read Consumer Reports.
Religiously. I mean, I knew the names of the authors.
Wow.
I know all about their test track in Connecticut for cars. You know, it's an amazing newspaper. It's an amazing magazine. You know, they buy.
I'm sorry. I'm chuckling because no one's ever like, you got to read Consumer Reports. But go ahead.
It's money porn.
Okay.
You gotta. They're the only people who do this. They buy everything they review at retail. Like if they're going to review a car, they buy the car. I mean, nobody does that. Usually, the company just gives you a loaner. That's how I've worked for decades. But no, they buy everything. You know, just to rule out the chance that, you know, they might have a conflict of interest there, that they might be biased because they got a fancy car to drive for a couple weeks. So I've always admired that.
I get it. But I mean, I can think of like maybe 2 times where I've picked up Consumer Reports and I was looking for something specific. After I found it, that was it. I didn't really like read. But, so I didn't even, I'm like, it's like, are you reading it for the articles? I don't even understand because that's a whole different level.
But that's the thing is each of these articles covers something that, I started out as a Broadway conductor. I didn't even get to that part, but I was a musician for 10 years out of college. I played in orchestra pits on Broadway. And even then, I was reading these articles that had no application to me. You know, whether you should get an indoor-outdoor speaker or just an outdoor speaker, or whether you want a microwave that has convection. And what does that mean? And you know, and a lot of times it turns out they're just marketing designations that have no real world use to you. And I got used to the fact that the world is made of marketers versus consumers, you know, and Consumer Reports would just lay bare their tactics month after month. I just found it fascinating, like seeing behind the curtain of The Wizard of Oz.
No doubt. And for the record, I just want a microwave that makes my popcorn on time and doesn't burn it. That's really all I care about. So
you want a Panasonic P2757B.
Somehow I think that's actually accurate coming from you. Like that's a real model number or something.
I'm sure it is.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so help me. Let's bridge this gap. You go from home where mom is reusing paper napkins, which, by the way, that's wow, impressive.
Yeah.
To music. How do we go from music to, because music to tech columnist to money? There's got to be a path that we're missing at the moment.
Yeah. How long is your podcast?
Yeah, I know, right?
Basically, the short story is I was in New York, struggling musician, doing Broadway shows, and I found out about this new software that came out for the Mac called Finale. It was sheet music software. Yeah. It's like Microsoft Word for sheet music. Mm-hmm. And it cost $1,000, and I couldn't afford that. And I was bemoaning this to one of my buddies at this Mac user group I belong to. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what you should do is you should tell them you're a reviewer, and they'll send you a free copy to write about it. And then you write an article for our computer club newsletter. And like, are you kidding me? It's that easy? And so I did. I wrote these guys, and I said, yes, I'm the music reviewer for the Mac Street Journal. Could you send me a free copy of your $1,000 program? And they did. And so I started doing that. Like for a year I did that. I got Photoshop for free, and I got all these, arts and music programs for free. And then that sort of led to this realization that, not only could I be getting my software for free, I could be making money for writing these reviews by writing for the computer magazine. So during my Broadway years, I was also writing for the glossy computer magazines, kind of doing both at the same time. And over time, one sort of phased out and the other kind of caught fire. I guess my musical skills were not quite as in demand as I expected.
Well, this is good, though. This is good because oftentimes on our superhero journey, we think, hey, this is the thing I'm meant to do, but it can lead us to something that we definitely weren't considering or looking for.
Right. You're right.
And you end up writing articles. Now, when the idea of writing articles occurred to you, are you one that's actually naturally good to the writing? Like if someone came to me and said, "Hey, Jay, you should write articles for a living," I'm just gonna freak out because I know writing is not the medium I communicate in. So was that an okay thing for you, or was there any hurdle there?
Well, this is what's funny is I'm not really a writer. I mean, I didn't study it. I wasn't an English major. That wasn't what I described myself as. I just write like I talk. So I would not be good at writing the great American novel, although someday I plan to try. But I write very casual, very colloquial. I don't refer to the people I'm writing technical books and articles for as the user, like I say, you can click this. And anyway, so as it turns out, writing about technical topics happens to be just right for that kind of really casual, friendly writing because people in general are intimidated by technology. So it turned out to be a good match. I mean, whenever people meet me, they always say, "Wow, man, you sound just like you write." And I'm like, "No, pal, you got it backwards." I basically write like I talk.
Got it. Okay, well, that's good. That's definitely have captured your voice for sure if you can translate it to the written word, because that's a skill in and of itself. Now, how long have you? But the book is not about writing articles. It's about money. So you're saying something was in the background all the time when this concept of value. Expound on that for me, if you will, a little bit, because how does value play into what you're doing, but more importantly, how we can get more bang for our buck?
Well, I love telling this story because it makes me look like a genius. but basically, it went like this. So I'm that guy who's standing behind you in line at the store, and I see how many steps you are taking to unlock your phone, or I'm in the movie theater and glaring at you because your phone is ringing in the movie and it takes you like 11 steps to shut it up. You pull it out of your pocket, you unlock it, blah, blah, blah. So I am the person who's always leaning over and saying, "Excuse me, there's a much better way to do that, right?" Like, I'll never forget, I was watching a piano recital for one of my kids. And at the end of the piano recital, they said, "Now we'll have to take a picture of all the young piano players." And everybody, all these husbands and wives pulled out their phones to take pictures of their kids. And this one lady had an iPhone, and she unlocked it, swiped, put in her password, went to the home screen, scrolled through to find the camera app, opened it, and by that time she'd missed the moment. Like, the kids were gone. And you can open the camera right without even unlocking it, don't you? So anyway, the bottom line is, years and years and years ago, I wrote a story for the New York Times about these 10 things like that I think everybody ought to know and is supposed to know, but doesn't know. Just simple things that your technology does that people seem to miss. Like, did you know on your phone, at the end of a sentence, you could hit the space bar twice?
I love
instead of fumbling for the period. Right. Well, a lot of people don't know that. I'd say over half do not realize that will give you the period, the space, and then auto-capitalize the next sentence. So anyway, and people are like, "Oh my God, I never knew that." And how could they know that, right? Like, there's no driver's ed for technology. There's no government pamphlet that sets out they don't teach it in schools. So how are you supposed to know how to use your tech? So I did a talk at the TED conference, one of the TED Talks in 2013 that had I sort of performed 10 of these things that you think everybody would know. And everyone's like, what? I didn't know that. And so I realized there's this huge gap. And so I did a book on it called Pogue's Basics. And that was 2 years ago. And this was 200 of these things all in one book. And to my great astonishment, after writing many, 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 many tech books, this was the first time I ever landed on the New York Times bestseller list. So when you do that, your publisher calls you back and they say, let's talk about a sequel. So then last year I came out with a sequel called Pogue's Basics Life. And this book is life hacks, like cool stuff about the world and things you're using wrong. And, the classic one, and you probably know this one, Jay, but I'd say half people don't, that when you pull into a gas station, and let's say you're in a rental car, you don't need to guess which side of the car the fuel tank is on. Because on your dashboard, on the fuel tank, is a little picture of a gas pump with an arrow pointing either to the right or to the left, and that's supposed to tell you which side of the car has the gas cap. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they go circling around the islands of the gas station trying to figure it out. So anyway, so that was Pogue's Basics Life, and then just now came out with Pogue's Basics Money, which takes the same approach, individual little info bits that people don't realize that in this case can save or make you money. Just money we're leaving on the table all the time. Travel and food and clothing and human interaction and groceries and movies and everything else.
Okay, so this is good. This is I'm excited, and I actually didn't know the gas tank thing. My wife did, and she told me. That's how I learned it. And she's always full of that stuff. So, and I just but now that it's so helpful now that I know it, because it's like, oh, okay. I haven't gotten it wrong since since then. So it's pretty cool. But all right.
Here's one you can try out on your wife so that you can lord it over her for knowing it.
Give me one, please.
Here's another one of my favorites. Did you know that when you're on the highway, those green signs that say, Los Angeles next 4 exits or whatever, the little green sign above the highway sign that tells you the exit number, like it'll say exit 27 Sacramento or whatever. The little one that says exit 27 is either on the right side or the left side of the big sign, and its placement tells you which side of the highway the exit ramp will be on.
No.
Yes. So if it says exit 27, and that's on the left side of the Sacramento sign, then the exit will be on the left.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be great. I can't wait.
You'll have a good dinner time conversation tonight.
Right, totally. It's gonna be like one of those, how did you know this? You see, that's why you got to have a podcast, Tony. It's great. You meet great people who know great things. So money is definitely something that we, use every day and sometimes misuse. You have this concept of unhealthy money decisions. Could you explain what those are for those that may not have made any of those yet? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
It is true, and it is wise of you to focus on this aspect of this book, because I have to say your podcast is for entrepreneurs and people applying your techniques to their businesses. Mine is much more. My book is much more finer grained. It's how to save money on oil changes and tires and movie tickets and food and stuff like that. But the other thrust of the book is money and psychology. And that is the craziest thing. We think that we are so rational, man is the only intelligent animal, all that stuff. It's bull. We are so bad when it comes to money. And my favorite books are those behavioral economists. Like there's this guy, Dan Ariely. He's been a Duke and then Princeton professor. And he does these crazy cool experiments that show how stupid we are, how dumb we get when we're faced with money. Like I love this example. The word free blows our decision making to bits. Like we cannot. So he did an experiment. He set up a stand in a grocery store, and shoppers could either buy a Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent or a Lindt chocolate truffle, one of those foil wrapped ball chocolates, for 25 cents. And it turns out that the sales were identical, 50-50. So what that should tell us is that the human brain considers the Lindt truffle worth 24 cents more than the Kiss, because it was going for 25 cents and the Kiss was going for a penny. So then the next day, he dropped each price by 1 penny. So the Lindt chocolate was now 24 cents and the Hershey's Kiss was free. Now remember, we've established that our rational brains place a 24% price difference, so that shouldn't affect what people take. But of course it did. Suddenly 90% of the people took the free Kiss, even though the relative difference between the prices hadn't changed. So free just makes our normal judgment go out the window. And then there are things like that all the time. Like, for example, if you are, let's say you have a wine shop, and you're trying to push this $18 of wine, what's the best way to sell that bottle of wine? Well, what you do is you put it between an $8 bottle of wine and an $80 bottle of wine. You will drive everyone to that $18 bottle of wine because we as humans are absurdly swayed by comparisons. When we go into a store, we don't really know if that's a good price or not. We can't maintain a database in our heads of what everything costs. But what we do is we say, wow, wine goes up to $80. I'm not so much of a cheapskate, I'm going to pay $8. But 18, that's right in the zone. That's nice. And so we shop for things relatively, and we fall for that all the time.
That's okay. So this is really funny listening to you right now, because especially that last one, there's when I've shared with a lot of people, like when you go to make an offer on a property, we have a form and a technique that we teach where you intentionally give 3 price choices.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
Well known.
But I didn't have the science behind it. I didn't know. I just know that, hey, when I do it this way, it works. And the first price is really, really low. The last price is really, really high. And the one you really want them to take, or the offer or the structure you really want them to take, put it in the middle. And I'm just like, that's funny.
That's exactly right. And this crops up all the time. Somebody did a survey when they asked, would you rather take a $50,000 a year job at some company where you knew that everyone else there is getting paid half as much? Or would you rather have a $100,000 a year job where you knew that everyone else around you is making twice as much? Now, a rational person would say, well, I'd take the $100,000 because that's worth more. But most people taking the study didn't think they could bear to know they're earning half as much as everyone around them. They'd rather take the $50,000 job and know that they're earning double their peers. I mean, it's insane, but that's how we work. We're super, super comparison based.
Okay, so do we have any shot at making a healthy money decision? Let's just reverse this question. Let's just change that around.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is to become aware. In fact, that's probably the only thing, is to become aware of how we're manipulated through these built-in biases. I mean, that's the main thing. Once you know this, you will see it everywhere in your life. Like, do you ever wonder why prices always end in 99 cents? I mean, it's stupid. Are we idiots? Do we really think that $49.99 is so much cheaper than $50? Why do they price things at $49.99? Well, again, it's the stupid psychology of our dumb brains. We say, well, look at the number in the tens place. That's way less than 50, and we mentally erase the rest of the price. And there's another classic example. If you, Jay, wanted to buy a car stereo, and there was a dealership near your house that had it for $200, but you heard that across town it was only $100, would you drive 20 minutes to get it for $100?
20 minutes with the car that I drive, yeah, that could work.
Yeah, to save $100.
Yeah.
Okay, but now suppose you're buying a car, and the dealership near you says it's $31,000.
Okay.
And in this case, would you drive across 20 minutes to get the same car for $30,900? $100 less. Most people wouldn't bother. It's like,
no.
It's a 0.3% savings. Who cares? $100 on a $30,000 car.
Well, but it does depend. Do I like the other salesman more?
But my point is, it's the same $100.
Yeah,
Why would you drive? Anyway, so the answer to your question is just be aware of what our weak spots are and how the marketing world manipulates us.
It's an interesting position that you're in. I mean, on one hand, what you produce in terms of those reviews become, marketing pieces for that particular product in some way, shape, or form. I know I'm always looking at reviews when I'm going to buy something and wondering what, hey, you tell me, did this work or not? You take the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, how on earth do you manage to keep this bias from outside of your writing? It seems like it would be really, really hard to do.
Well, I mean, keep in mind two things. First of all, I don't get to keep anything that I review. I mean, this is how all major publications work. Is the companies send you their iPhone or their Galaxy S8 or whatever to review, but you only have 2 or 3 weeks to use it, and then you have to send it back. So they can't buy me off that way. And the other part of it is that, remember, my job is not to tell you to buy something, it's to tell you whether to buy something. So, by all rights, half of the stuff that I review, I'm saying don't buy it. You can do better. So I wouldn't say they always are so thrilled to use my reviews as marketing pieces.
Don't send it to him. Don't send it to him. Send it to the other guy.
That's happened. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget. There was one guy who was so upset with my review that company never sent me anything to review again. It's like really childish.
Okay, I got it. All right, so when it comes to the ideas of entrepreneurs and their money, or just money in general, what are some of the things that let's identify what you would call some of those unhealthy money decisions for those who may not who are wondering, they just may not know if they're making any of those or not.
Well, I think one key thing is that one way to guard yourself against making a bad decision, if it's a big expenditure you're thinking of making, whether it's an acquisition or a refrigerator or a hot water heater, whatever. A lot of psychologists refer to the 30-day cool-off rule. Now, I'm not talking about a piece of real estate that might be sold out from under you. I'm talking about, a TV or a cocktail dress or a timeshare condominium. Mm-hmm. There's a huge satisfaction that you can just taste that you'll get from buying it right now. But if you're able instead to open your phone's notepad and write down the name of the thing, the price, and the date, and then let it sit there for 30 days. An amazing thing happens. First of all, in those 30 days, you will have time to research that thing and find out if there's a better price or a better model, or you'll find out from other people that it was a ripoff. But more important, you've let the temporary aspects of that impulse buy evaporate. The way it was set up in the store with the good lighting and the exclamation points and the 99 ending of the price and the temporary craving. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that people buy twice as much at the grocery when they shop hungry.
I'm not allowed to go anymore.
If you've just eaten, you'll buy a lot less. So it's the same thing. So if you just allow yourself 30 days or even 2 weeks to let that thing cool off, it's amazing how much less you will spend in a year than otherwise. Another common tactic is to perform the dollars to hours conversation in your head. And again, these are sort of more consumery tactics.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to like this next one.
We, as a species, are terrible at comprehending big numbers. So you can probably picture 5 water balloons.
Sure.
But can you actually picture 5,000? Can you picture 50,000? Can you picture 5 million?
No.
You really can't. So
I don't like balloons, but yes.
Oh, and don't get me started on clowns.
Oh, right. There we go.
So we can understand like 3 children or $45, but once numbers get into hundreds or thousands, forget it. We can intellectually compare them, but we can't picture them. So when you're considering buying something, personal money advisors suggest convert its price into the time it would take you to earn it. So if you make $40 an hour after taxes and you're considering buying something that's $400, you say, well, I would have to work for 10 hours to pay that back. And that makes the $400 price tag more personal, more real, and it gives your brain a chance to really comprehend its cost. My wife, who's the most wonderful human being in the world. I don't care how much you like your wife.
As you should.
But she does make fun of me for this obsession I have with deals and beating the system. And one time she pointed out, what is your fixation with going to the library every time you want to read a novel? Why don't you just buy it like a normal person? I mean, in paperback, the book's $9. What's your deal? And I said, well, come on, that's $9 I don't need to pay. I can go to the library. And she said, but you pay $11 to go to a movie. I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, how much pleasure does that bring you in time? I'm like, well, most movies are like an hour and a half or 2 hours. She goes, right. How long does it take you to read a novel? I'm like, oh, well, probably a week. Oh. So she made me realize that I would actually be paying less per hour of pleasure to buy a novel than to go see a movie. I felt kind of sheepish because, again, it wasn't rational.
Well, at the same time, though, this totally puts to death the argument that our wives aren't listening.
Who said that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So
she catches me all the time with this stuff.
But yeah, and I like the way you think because I do the same thing, and annoyingly to my wife at sometimes, because I will negotiate just because I feel like I should, and it's kind of what I do. To the point to where, I mean, and here's so you gave me one, I'm gonna give you one right now, and everyone listening is the next time if you go to Starbucks or any fast food or retail establishment, they're all trained to ask you one question at the end. And that question simply being, would you like anything else?
Right.
And if you respond to that with the following words and a smile at the end, you'll be surprised. And you just simply say, yes, a 10% discount, please.
Oh. And that works, huh?
It has worked. I'm telling you, it really works at Starbucks. It works at gas stations. I've had people do this because we are uncomfortable with money, I think. And we don't talk about this as much. We don't come up with strategies and ways to make sure that every dollar we get goes further, because every dollar that we do keep isn't a dollar we can invest. It's a dollar of a business. It's someone's salary. It's something that we could do in a completely different way. So you talked about the idea of how to, I'm thinking about the inverse relationship to money, because inverse relationship of what we just talked about, meaning I know a number of people who earn a significant amount of money per hour, but, for example, refuse to let anyone else do something like, I don't know, mow their own lawn.
Oh.
And I'm like, that, to me, that feels backwards. So who's right, Dave?
That is backwards. I mean, that's irrational. I mean, we are irrational beings, and of course, nothing that I've said talks about emotional satisfaction. That is why we deliberately pay too much for something. That when we go to a fancy restaurant to celebrate a birthday or an accomplishment, paying way too much for the food we're getting because it brings us emotional satisfaction. And I don't mean to diss people who do that. All I'm saying is be aware. Like there are people who buy a $100,000 car when a $30,000 car would get them where they're going just as quickly and easily, because it brings them satisfaction to own something valuable. I get that. But all I'm saying is don't be tricked into it. And I have to say that 10% thing, I should not have been surprised, because there are two of the tips in the Pogue's Basics Money book are exactly that. And one is your cable TV and internet. It's a pretty well-known trick that if you call them and threaten to quit, like I'd like to discontinue service because I'm going to get all my TV off the internet and Netflix and so on, that the first thing they'll do, every one of these cable companies, is they will hand you off to a customer retention specialist. That's a person whose sole job is to talk you out of it by giving you a discount. So your listeners today can call their cable companies and get $40 or $50 a month off their bill just by threatening to quit. But what I didn't realize that's not quite as well known a trick is that you don't have to pretend. You don't have to say I'm going to quit. You can just call up and say, look, I've been a subscriber for 8 years, and new members you're giving these big discounts to, and people who threaten to quit you're giving big discounts to. Couldn't you give me the same discount? And they will. They will. You just ask for it. And same thing if you're in credit card debt. I don't know if you're aware of this, but 40% of Americans right now are carrying a balance on their credit cards. They don't pay it off every month. And the average amount they're carrying is $9,600. I mean, people are really in debt on their credit cards, and they're paying, 15, 17, 21% interest on that balance. It's a hole that's hard to dig out of. But what you don't realize is if you have your act together, you can call the credit card company and ask them for a break. You can just say, look, I plan to be employed again by September. I'm looking for a job. I plan to pay you back in these installments. Can you help me out and cut it down to like 5% interest or something like that? And they will play ball with you. They don't want you to file for bankruptcy. They will play ball and cut you a break. So asking works. You're absolutely right.
I agree with it 100%, and it's in ways that we don't normally do that. So we were talking earlier about the psychology, and now being, a podcaster and having stuff online and the way technology works today, the world is really, really small. So we get to deal with many different cultures. And is it me, or is it that other cultures seem to have a better handle, other than Americans is what I'm referring to, have a better handle on being willing to talk about money and asking for discounts? Because I promise you, anytime I go overseas, it's negotiation central everywhere I go.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Asia and the African continent and any places but the big cities, really, haggling is very common and expected. The funniest scene I've ever think I've ever seen is in this Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian, where the hero is being chased by an angry mob, and all he wants to do is buy a fake beard and mustache from a marketplace guy who's selling fake beards and mustaches. And he's desperate. He's about to lose his life. He goes, quick, how much for the fake beard? And the guy says, oh, that's 50 shekels. And so the hero hands over 50 shekels. He goes, okay, here you go, quick. And the salesman says, no, you're supposed to counter. You're supposed to say, oh, 50, that's ridiculous. I'll give you 20. And so the hero goes, oh, okay, fine, 20, I'll give you 20. And the salesman says, 20? I've never been so insulted in all my life. That's absurd. It just goes on like this. But you just told me. Anyway, it's so funny. But yeah, so haggling and negotiation is really standard in less, developed metropolitan parts of the world. And the part that we're stumbling onto here is that it is actually possible in the United States as well. One of my readers wrote to me that every time he goes to a Best Buy and he's standing there with his toaster oven or his digital camera at the cash register, he'll say, listen, would you take $70 for it? He'll offer them $10 or $15 less than the price tag. And frequently they're like, let me ask the manager. And then they say, okay. So if you have the cojones to do it, it's more effective than you might think. On the other hand, I will say that what we're talking about in other cultures, being more aware of money in general, I would say probably not, because that whole haggling culture, that is using these same techniques that we do now. You know what I mean? They deliberately price that scarf higher than its value, knowing that. So when you negotiate for a piece of real estate, I mean, it's very common that the published price, as I'm sure you know, is higher than they expect the final sales price to be, because they want to set a starting place, a line in the sand to work down from.
Right.
So it's very, very smart. So if my house is worth $200,000, I can put it on the market for $250,000, and then I'm hoping that you will make an offer of, $220,000, and I can act like I'm being so generous. All right, tell you what, $235,000. When really I'm getting away with murder. That's the way it works.
Yes. In fact, I often tell people to treat the list price of anything the same way they do a stop sign. Ignore them.
Oh, wow.
Well, just saying. It's especially in California, right? Especially in California. And you brought up another category, though, in what we were talking about that I think is rapidly changing and ripe for this type of conversation, and that being the cars. Now, I will have to admit, I was the guy that I did have an Audi S8. It is a very nice vehicle, and it is in that category. However, a couple years ago, I've since let go of the whole car thing, and I've just started using Uber and Lyft, and that's just what I do intentionally. And I found that in this case that there's a significant cost savings, regardless of the type of car that you would have. But there's a significant cost savings because I now don't have to worry about oil changes and tires and maintenance and all this other stuff, and the car is always going to work and start or come pick me up, etc., etc. My question is, what are some of those, how is technology creating more of these areas where we may not be thinking about, this is something, I used to do this, but if I use this piece of technology or this piece of service, I might be able to save another $100 a month or something.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me commend you on the Uber thing. That is like the great unsung. I mean, people think of Uber as a replacement for a taxi. That is, I'm going to this new city and I'll take an Uber from the airport. But I'm thinking people should be thinking of Uber much more broadly. In the book, there's a section on Disney World and those theme parks. And first of all, you can save a huge amount of money by buying your tickets in advance online. Do not buy at the gate or you'll get ripped off.
Yeah.
Second of all, most families plan their little vacation and they say, okay, this will be our hotel and this will be our rental car. But I'm not sure you need one.
Right.
I did the math on a Disney World vacation, and if what you're doing is taking your kids from the hotel to the Disney parking lot, which is $30 a day, and then back again to the hotel, where parking is $20 a night, if you're there for 5 nights, you would have saved a lot more money by taking an Uber every day. So rental cars are not always the way to do it. And while we're on the subject of cars, I have to rant briefly about another one of the tips in the book, which is about oil changes.
Yeah.
The sticker they put on your windshield at this moment tells you to change it every 3,000 miles. Change the oil every 3,000 miles, another 30 or 40 bucks. That has not been true since like the Eisenhower administration. So if you look at your car's manual, the manufacturer's recommendation, there is no car sold today where you need to change the oil more often than every 10,000 or even 15,000 miles. So it is a scam of all scams that those places still put a come back in 3,000 miles sticker in your car. The authority on your car, the company that made it, says 10 or 15. So you're changing your oil 3 to 5 times as often as you should be.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons that the oil changes on that car was $250 each.
Oh,
it's a V10. It's kind of awesome.
Was it made of unicorn tears or something?
It would. I don't know. It was the same engine that's in a Lamborghini, but in an Audi. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes, there are other ways that the technological revolution has made it possible to save money. I'll just toss out a couple of quick examples here. Anyone who buys stuff from Amazon, and there's lots of us, should know that that Amazon offers their own special credit card called the Amazon Store Card. It's good only for use in buying stuff from Amazon, and there's no fee, but it gives you 5% off, 5% cash back on everything you ever buy. And 5% is more of a universal discount than any cashback credit card in the world will give you. So 5% off everything that you buy in a year from Amazon, that adds up. So the catch is that if you don't pay off your bill every month, it has an unusually high penalty fee. So just pay it off every month and enjoy your 5% off everything you ever buy. And here's another high-tech example. When you buy a computer, you buy a laptop or digital camera, buy a refurb unit, a refurbished unit. Every one of these companies like Apple and Dell, they all have these special websites full of refurbished electronic equipment. And you think what that means is it was broken and then fixed. That isn't what it means. That's what the government says you have to call it. But that is not what it means. It means this thing at one point was in the hands of a consumer. It was sold and then returned for whatever reason. You know, they changed their mind. They got 2 of them for Christmas. Their kid, went to college and didn't need it. Whatever. The thing has been inspected more than a new one would have been, and it carries exactly the same warranty. The only difference is it's 15% less expensive than the same identical new one. So I just priced a MacBook Air on Apple's refurb website. It was $1,100, and on their refurb page, the exact same machine was $950. So, and I buy all my laptops that way, and for my kids. So I don't know why anyone would buy a new one when they could have a new one for 15% off.
Indeed. Totally understood. Now, for those that have listened this far and are probably furiously taking notes, like, oh man, I need to do that. So what's going to be the best way for them to drink more of the Kool-Aid of David Pogue?
Well, my website is davidpogue.com, Pogue, like Vogue. And that's links to all my TV segments and all my articles and stuff like that and all the books. And then, the book we've been talking about is called Pogue's Basics Money. And, of course, the cheapest way to get that is from the library.
Yes, there's a run on the library right now. I can see it.
But on the other hand, you could also buy it. It's like $15. So
yes, totally understood. Now, as we wind down here, I have a final question for you. And your answers, I know it's going to be interesting already. So, let me put it this way. Let's pretend for a moment that someone listening is thinking about jumping in that entrepreneurial pool. Now, you've done it. in spectacular fashion. You didn't see yourself writing hundreds of books. You did, but you didn't see that. That wasn't like, okay, but that's what happened for you. But they're standing at the precipice of that cliff. They're about to take that leap. They're standing in front of the superhero outfit store, and they're ready to pick out their cape and tights and go make that thing happen. However, in the back of their mind, they have that voice. And I know you know that voice. You've dealt with it. It's that voice that comes up every time you go, ooh, I'm going to go do something great. It comes up to remind us of how ungreat we really are. And who are we to think that we could do such of anything? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. If you knew that person who's listening would actually follow through on what you suggest, and they would do so in the next 24 to 48 hours, what would you tell them to do?
Well, I actually do have an interesting answer to this.
I'm not surprised.
As we've discussed, I started my career as a musician, working for Broadway shows, and I was paid by the week. A week of work for this much money. A week of work for this much money. It was not enough money. It was barely enough money to live on in New York City.
Right.
It was definitely not enough money to get out of New York City and buy a house somewhere. It was not enough money to raise children on. It was a one-to-one relationship between the time and the money. And at one point, I began to look ahead, and I realized that with a one-to-one relationship, by doing work hourly or weekly, I would never be able to break out. The only way to do that would be to do something with at least the potential of a geometric income. That is, you do this much work, but you have the potential of being paid way out of proportion to that. And if you think about where you can do that, that means creating something, writing a book, composing a song, becoming a band, starting a company, founding a brand. Only those things have the potential for breaking out of the $1 per 1 hour sort of relationship. Those are the things where you can start to leverage X amount of time for A, B, C, D, E, F, G amount of money. And I am, obviously a business can fail, but when you fail, that means you've learned. You've just been to grad school for that business, and you'll know what to do for the next time. But the point doesn't change, that if you are an entrepreneur, if you take the gamble, only that way will you ever break out of being somebody paid arithmetically instead of geometrically. And so that would be my advice to the person on the precipice. Only by taking the leap will you ever find out if you can really get past the drudgery of being paid per time slot.
Love it a lot. I definitely appreciate everything that you've had to share with us. I think this might go down as the podcast where people save the most money. And we may have inadvertently increased librarian workload, but that's okay. and they'll deal with it. But nonetheless, I appreciate your knowledge, your insight, and your wisdom that you've shared with us today here at the CashFlow Diary.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means, well, you heard it from him. I've said it, but now you're hearing other people say it. You got to have, he called it geometric income. And I love that. Go over to davidpogue.com. Buy one book. Buy all of them. I don't know. You know the ones that you need. But here's what I do know. You all use money. And I heard lots of great tips. So it's Pogue's Basics Money. Go make that happen, because you never know. Someone once said that, a penny saved is kind of like a penny earned. Well, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.